Welcome back to Wargames Battle Reports. Got another old world game today against Michael. This time we're playing drawn battle lines with 3 strategic locations. Do you want to just quickly go over the Orc and Goblin deployment?
So we've got 40 archers with level 3 shaman, 10 spider riders, level 1 shaman, so he's got itchy nuisance. He's taken a lore familiar so he can get all the spells he wants. We've got 2 characters and a unit of 34 goblins. So we've got the battle standard. I've got war banner on the unit. And then this is my general. I've got 2 squig herds, giant, 2 manglers, and then a war boss on mangler squig. Cave squig over in the corner, hopefully to take out some ghouls and characters.
Account side, we've got a corpse cart with balefire brazier and unquiet spirits, 12 crypt ghouls with a crypt ghast, a big block of skeletons with a war banner and the White Lord BSB, some Graveguard with the Drakenhof banner. There's also a Banshee between them. Hiding out of view just behind the house is a level 4 Necromancer. He's got the Skull Staff and Ruby Ring. And for spells, he got Van Howl's Deathly Cabal, Unquiet Spirits, Spiritual Vortex, and Curse of Years. Over on this side, there's a Terrorgeist, a unit of Hex Wraiths, 3 Spirit Hosts on the flank, and a White King with Monster Slaying Sword, Paymaster's Coin, and Charm Shield. Vampire counts turn 1. Movement. These units have moved up a little bit. The Necromancer failed to cast Deathly Cabal on himself, but then managed to cast Van Howl's on the skeletons, giving them +2 movement. So they moved up a little bit further than they would have been able to. Helm of Commandment has also given them +3 weapon skill for the moment. Moved up fairly cautiously over here with the Hex Wraiths, Terrorgeist and Graveguard. And then these units have moved up the flank a little bit as well. End of the turn, the Spirit Hosts have continued forward with reserve move. And over here, the Necromancer tried to cast Ruby Ring, but it failed. Night Goblins turn 1. Movement and magic. Cast Evil Suns on this unit. Tried to cast Itchy Nuisance on the ghouls, but it was dispelled thanks to the Necromancer's Skull Staff. The spiders failed their Impetuous, but then also failed their charge anyway, so they haven't really moved very far. These units all moved up a little bit. The Squig Herds and the Giant moved up, but the Manglers behind them haven't really gone anywhere. On the far side, though, the Warboss and Cave Squig got a big roll for its random movement and has gone into the Spirit Hosts. So, shooting, cast a Foot of Gork down here, and 2 ghouls were killed by the archers. Then Vindictive Glare has put 2 wounds onto the corpse cart. Tried to cast a Ruby Ring as well, but that failed. Combat over here. One Hit Wonder managed to do 3 wounds to the Spirit Hosts, and they did nothing in return. So then they lost another 4 wounds due to combat res and have given ground. The Warboss has followed up to stay in combat with them. Vampire counts turn 2 movement. Over here, the White King has charged in to help out the Spirit Hosts. Here, these units have moved up a bit. Managed to cast Curse of Years onto the Squig Herd and got extra weapon skill from the Helm again. but the skeletons decided not to charge this turn, and they've just moved on to the objective in front of them. A Fanatic was released from the Night Goblins here and went through the skeletons, ending up here. Did 2 wounds, but they actually both got regened. Over here, failed to dispel the Foot of Gork, and it's moved back a few inches. Also, the Necromancer brought back the 2 ghouls that had died, and they've continued up onto the objective. Shooting, tried to cast Ruby Ring and Spiritual Vortex, but failed, but then managed to cast Unquiet Spirits, killing 2 goblins from this unit. The cart over here also tried to cast its Unquiet Spirits, but failed. Banshee screamed at the squigs, but with the war boss nearby, it didn't do anything, which is another benefit of them being infantry rather than war beasts. Over here, the Terrorgeist screamed into the other squigs, and it killed 3 of them. Combat here. Combat was pretty disastrous. The war boss did 2 wounds to the spirit host, and the king also took a wound from the cave squig. The king only did 1 wound to the war boss, so both it and the spirit host ended up losing combat and taking more wounds from combat res, and the war boss has followed up into the spirit hosts. Night Goblins turn 2. Magic and movement. Tried to cast Itchy Nuisance, but it was dispelled by the Necromancer, but did successfully cast Evil Sons. Over here, the Foot of Gork went through the corpse cart, doing 1 wound to it before getting dispelled. Here, the Spider Riders charged into the ghouls, and then Fanatic went through both units. The ghouls didn't take any damage, but 1 spider died from the Fanatic. In the centre, this unit moved sideways slightly, and the squig herd has charged into the skeletons. A Fanatic went through the Graveguard, killing 1. The Manglers have both moved up a bit. They needed to roll really high if they wanted to get into any good targets. This one's now precariously close to the Fanatic. The Giant and the Squig Herd both made long charges and have gone into the Terrorgeist. Shooting, Vindictive Glare killed the corpse cart, and then a few of the goblins on the hill had arc and range to shoot at the Necromancer. They were able to shoot at him because there were no other valid targets, and they've put a wound on him. Combat, end of the Night Goblin turn, absolutely disastrous for the vampire counts. Here there's only 3 ghouls remaining. The Spider Riders killed a few and took 3 wounds in return, but then because the ghouls lost combat, more died to unstable, and then they hit the Fanatic behind them while giving ground, so there's now only 3 remaining. In the middle, the squigs killed 4 skeletons. They lost combat and went wild, but rolled really low for the range and didn't really do any damage. Here, the Terrorgeist killed 4 squigs, but has taken 5 wounds after losing the combat. So it's still locked in combat, but only has 1 wound left. And over on the flank, the war boss has now finished off the spirit hosts. The one-hit wonder is still a magical weapon even when it's lost its other abilities. Vampire counts turn 3. Movement and magic. Managed to bring back 6 ghouls in the unit, and they've charged back into the spiders. The Fanatic that was behind them hit the house and died. Over here, some Fanatics went through the Graveguard and skeletons. It didn't do anything to the Graveguard, but a few skeletons died. Failed to cast any spells this phase. The skeletons did get +3 weapon skill again from the Helm of Commandment, but with no assistance from magic, decided they couldn't risk charging, but have moved up to an inch away from the Night Goblin mob. Here, the Banshee has charged into the side of this Mangler, and the Hex Wraiths have charged into the other Mangler squig. The White King has charged back into the War Boss in this corner. Shooting, failed to cast Spiritual Vortex, but managed to get Ruby Ring and Unquiet Spirits off into this unit, which combined killed 9 goblins. The Banshee screamed into the Mangler, and the Terrorgeist tried to scream at the Squig herd, but they both passed leadership, so didn't take any wounds. End of the Vampire Count's turn 3. In this corner, these two did nothing to each other. The combat with the Terrorgeist, the Squigs killed it easily, but then it exploded into a cloud of swarming bats, which killed one of the Squigs, but didn't get the Fanatic, unfortunately. The Squigs and Giant managed to restrain and have turned to face the Graveguard. Here, the Banshee actually managed to cause a wound to the Mangler with its one attack, and also had a flank charge, but the Mangler still passed its break test. Against the other Mangler, the Hex Wraiths did 2 wounds, but then it rolled a double 1 for its break test, so just gave ground. Over here, the ghouls killed all but one of the spiders, with only the champion left, who also rolled a double 1 for its break test, so just gave ground. Night Goblin's turn 3, magic and movement. Tried to cast Itchy Nuisance and Evil Sons, but both of them failed. Over here, charged with the Giant and the remaining Squigs into the Graveguard. Both these Fanatics rolled hits and didn't go anywhere, and this unit has just reformed to face the skeletons. Night Goblin shooting, tried to cast Foot of Gork, but it got dispelled. Vindictive Glare and Ruby Ring went into the skeletons, but only killed one of them. Vindictive Glare rolled a 1 to wound. Another 3 died from poisoned archers. End of the Night Goblin combat. The one remaining spider challenged and killed the Cryptghast during the combat. Over here, neither side did any wounds at all in the actual combat, but with all the static res, the Squigs lost the combat and exploded, but didn't do any wounds. The Giant's unbreakable, so just gave ground. Then, even with the BSB reroll, the Graveguard failed to restrain and followed up into the Giant. Over here, the Hex Wraiths did no wounds, so remain locked in combat with the Mangler. And in the combat with the other Mangler, the Banshee somehow caused a wound again with its 1 attack, outperforming the entire Hex Wraith unit. The Mangler has fled, but the Banshee was unable to catch it. In the corner, these two continue to be incapable of actually doing anything to each other. Vampire Count's turn 4 magic and movement. The Necromancer brought back 5 skeletons and also cast Van Hels on them, which combined with Helm of Commandment means that they're now at +4 weapon skill. Also cast Curse of Years onto the Goblins, and the skeletons have charged into them. This Fanatic moved close to the house and this one rolled a hit and stayed where it is. The Banshee declared a charge on the fleeing Mangler, which forced it to keep running, and it's fled off the board. Shooting, failed to cast Spiritual Vortex again, as it's just too difficult, really. Rolled high enough for Ruby Ring and Unquiet Spirits, but they both got dispelled. End of turn 4 combat. These two continue to just look menacingly at each other. And over here, the giant killed quite a few Graveguard and took no wounds, but the Graveguard, due to static combat res, they still won. The Hexwraiths finished off the Mangler and then failed to restrain, even with the BSB nearby. And over here, the ghouls killed the last spider and restrained. In the centre, it went really badly for the skeletons. Even with the weapon skill difference and Curse of Years, they only killed 2 goblins. 3 regular skeletons died, and the champion was overkilled in a challenge with the war boss. So the skeletons lost combat, but didn't crumble too much thanks to the BSB being in there. Magic and movement. Cast Evil Sun's Shining on this unit and tried to cast Itchy Nuisance here, but it didn't go off. The giant has charged back into the Graveguard, and the Fanatic next to them stayed where it was. This other Fanatic has moved closer towards the Hexwraiths. Shooting, the archers shot into the ghouls and, combined with Fireball from the Ruby Ring, have killed all the ghouls. Also, cast Vindictive Glare into the skeletons, but they made their regen save and it didn't do anything. End of turn 4, the White King has been killed and the War Boss has overrun here near the Banshee. In this combat, the Giant continued to kill Graveguard. The Graveguard didn't do anything in return, but again, still won due to static res and have pushed the Giant back. Here, despite having Van Hal's Crown of Commandment and Curse of Years on the Goblins and also outnumbering them, the skeletons didn't do a lot and the combat was tied. The War Boss had declared a challenge and the BSB was forced to accept, but they didn't wound each other. Vampire Count's turn 5, movement and magic. The Necromancer didn't have any targets for spells, but tried to put Deathly Cabal on himself, but again failed to cast. The Hexwraiths have done a big wheel to get around the back of the house, and the Graveguard have moved back a bit here. And over here, the Banshee has tried to put some distance between itself and the War Boss. Shooting, the Banshee screamed at the War Boss, doing just enough wounds to kill it. And over here, the Necromancer failed to cast Unquiet Spirits and Spiritual Vortex, but did manage to put a wound on the Giant with Ruby Ring. Combat. In the challenge, the White Lord BSB was killed by the War Boss, did no wounds in return. And the Goblins have lost 3 models, but killed 6 skeletons, and then some more crumbled, as without the BSB, there's no way to mitigate the losses anymore. Night Goblin's turn 5. The Giant has charged back into the Graveguard. Over here, cast Itchy Nuisance onto the Hexwraiths. And on the hill, the archers have reformed to face the Hexwraiths. Shooting, 1 bow shot went down here at the Necromancer, but it missed. And then Ruby Ring was cast onto the Hexwraiths, but it only got 3 hits, and only 1 wounded despite Itchy Nuisance, and then that wound got regened. Combat, the Graveguard put 2 wounds on the giant and took some wounds in return. The Graveguard won combat again, but only because of the musician, and they're quite depleted now. Here, there was a challenge between the war boss and the champion, who had been resurrected earlier. The champion survived, making a regen save. The skeletons still had better weapon skill, but still only killed 1 and lost 4, and then crumbled another 5 because of combat res and have given ground. Vampire Count's turn 6 failed to cast any spells, but resurrected 7 skeletons with invocation. Over here, the Hexwraiths charged. They declared a charge against the shaman, who failed terror and fled. And in chasing the shaman, they ended up going into the rear of the Night Goblins. There's still 1 fanatic flying around down here, and the Banshee has moved up a little bit. Magic and Shooting failed to cast anything this turn, and the Banshee wasn't in range. Combat, the Skeletons and Hexwraiths lost combat. The Hexwraiths only did 2 wounds, and the Skeletons did nothing. And between Goblin attacks and crumbling, 4 Skeletons and 1 Hexwraith have died, and both units gave ground. Night Goblins turn 6 cast Itchy Nuisance on the Hexwraiths with Irresistible Force, making them -3 toughness. Here, cast Evil Sons on the archers, and over here the giant has gone back into the Graveguard. Shooting, attempted to cast Vindictive Glare and Fireball from the Ruby Ring, but they were both dispelled. Then 1 archer was in range and took a shot at the Necromancer but missed. End of the turn and end of the game. The Night Goblins killed the rest of the skeletons and are in control of this objective. And over here, the Graveguard managed to kill the giant and in range of this objective. The victory points were 1435 to 1294 in favour of the Night Goblins. The Wraiths surviving and the giant being killed at the end made the result a lot closer than it looked like it was going to be. The Vampire Counts don't have much left, but the Graveguard is still over 25%. Thanks to Michael for the game. Stay tuned for more Old World content, and thanks for watching.